basic difference is that most bass players sound like this. Whereas I sound quite different. Like that.
To me, Lemmy's the cover of Bass Player magazine. I mean, he just emits all that is a true metal bass player. There's nothing fancy about it. It ain't pretty. It sounds friggin' dirty and gnarly, and it's like, that is everything that us black t-shirt metal fans love.
Technically, he really doesn't play bass. He plays Lemmy instrument.
It's lead bass out of guitar amps.
It's more chordal than it is bass. Sonically, the amps have a lot more mid-range on them.
Lemmy plays a kind of gnarled kind of bass style, but it's a little bit flowery as well, so it's got a foot in both camps, you know? It's rugged but handsome.
When I first heard it, I thought it was a guitar. It was just so big and distorted and beefy, and I'd never heard anything like that ever before.
How would you describe it if someone asked you?
Haphazard, really. Guesswork on a major scale. I'm a rhythm guitarist. I never trained as a bass player. I play a lot of open strings like
He's one of the loudest bass players on the planet.
He really goes to 11. He goes to, you know, 1,011.
He's the loudest one in the band. And he can sing over the top of that.
Basically, Lemmy's sound is caused by overdriving everything. So if you go around the back of his amp and look at his wireless, it's in the red. It's overdriving. And that's mostly what his sound is. Most people couldn't get that sound without using pedals, but Lemmy does.
You know, when you hear that coming out of an amplifier 10 or 12 feet away from you, it's like you're standing in front of a goddamn freight train.
Lemmy's bass is the driving force of all that is Motorhead, that and probably the drums, and it's almost like the guitar is sort of the thing that rounds it out, which is completely opposite of most bands. Usually the bass is kind of the thing that fits in and kind of fleshes out the sound of the band.
I think Motorhead's the first to be like that fast and that hard driving and constant, you know, like getting your ass kicked on the ground and somebody's still kicking you, like, oh, you know what I mean? It's like, it's relentless. It's badass. It's, yeah, man. I don't know, man. It moves me. That's all I can say.
The first guy to do that distorted bass thing. And I think back in the day, like people like him and Geezer Butler, for instance, from Black Sabbath, they didn't have PAs at the time, so they had to turn their amps up for the crowd. So it just when you crank that shit, it has this edge and this growl and this distortion that comes through. And I think at one point in Lemmy's career, he heard that and went, oh, right, that's me.
Nobody plays Rickenbackers anymore, really. You know, it's kind of an instrument that a lot of people have viewed as dated and maybe not technically being able to keep up with the times and the aggressive sounds of today. But I don't know how Lemmy does it. Maybe it's the Marshalls or just the attitude and conviction that, you know, that is coming out of his pores, you know. It penetrates through that sound and through his instrument. and it just works for him. We could never imagine Lemmy playing anything else but a good old classic Ricky, or a custom Ricky, I should say.
When I play bass, it's a completely different mindset for me when I hit the stage and play bass. And it's not about how technically good you are, or watch me do this, or hey man, I'm John Paul Jones right now, you know? It's not about that. It's about you attack, you're in attack mode. And I learned that directly from listening to Lemmy and watching Lemmy.
Most bands, my bass sound wouldn't work with any four-piece really.
Yeah, so that's
too busy, you know.
Yeah.
It's like John Entwistle's the only other one. My hero, John Entwistle, you know, the late great John Entwistle from The Who. He was the only one I saw that was as busy as me that made it work, you know. But that's because he had Keith Moon playing with him, you know, because they didn't. Mooney didn't follow the bass particularly, he followed the guitar, you know, and the vocals, like, which is what I do. I play for the vocals, you know, really. I always wanted that sound. I didn't necessarily know it then, you know. It evolves, you know. As Mickey has often, and very rightly said, there is not much bass end in this band unless it's the bass drums and the tom-toms, you know, because I don't play bottom stuff. I like to saw your head off. I don't like to accompany the singing, you understand?